I've got just this like corner here. Okay. So, no Steve today?
No.
That's okay. So, so we're going to be taking a bit of a break from Unity for a while. We're going to learn about Windows Forms. Now that we have some kind of basis established in C#, we should, in theory, be able to apply some of the knowledge that we've gained so far to a different sort of application. So, what is meant by Windows Forms? Does anybody have any idea?
.NET?
This is the technology we will be using, yes. So basically, when you are creating a sort of, in the modern context, we call these native applications, but you know, in a historical context, you just called them applications. Basically, uh-oh. Alright. Remind me to pick up another marker. There we go. So basically, right? You might have, you know, name with a text box, favorite color with a text box, right? With a little button. Look a little bit like a button. This is what we're talking about, right? We're going to make Windows Forms. Now, fortunately, a certain amount of this is assisted using Visual Studio. Visual Studio is the program that you use for this type of development. Both .NET, Windows Forms, and Visual Studio are all Microsoft products. They're designed to work together. You don't have to do it here, but it helps a lot. So, if everybody could just open Visual Studio from Visual Studio, we'll make a new project together. Every time, right? Okay. So, how many people can see this splash screen? Yeah. If you just launch Visual Studio from the taskbar, you should get this splash screen. Once it's done its loading routine. Basically, you're not opening it with a file, you're just opening the program.
So mine is one looks like this.
Yeah, you're going to click new. Okay, well, let's just,
Wait.
that's Visual Studio Code, which is different from Visual Studio.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Visual Studio is, do you have it installed? It is, it's installed natively on these guys, so. Okay. So, we are going to create a new project in Visual Studio. Create new project. Boing. There we go. So you can see we have a lot of different doodads here. Yes, so the tags, right? Operating system support, language of use, and then sometimes other services like cloud or web services. We're not really concerned about those. Console app is like your most basic one. That just runs a command line application. So a command line application is essentially like what we were doing with the Unity debug log, right? Except that's it. But you can also enter data using the console as well. But that's not what we're after today. Today we are after Windows Form application. There we are. You can also probably just search Windows Form. There you go. So we will want to create a Windows Form application. Please note that you have the option of creating one in either C# or Visual Basic. Please click C#, not Visual Basic. Even if you know Visual Basic, this is a class in C# basic. So,
Professor, I cannot find it.
So this was originally, which is recent, so which one I should select, because I have.
and,
mm,
oh, it might not be allowing you because you're on Mac.
Yeah.
If you look, yeah, do it here.
Okay.
If you take a look, Windows Form app,
It's the Windows.
yeah, no Mac is indicated there, so
Okay.
sorry.
No worries.
I mean, it is called a Windows Form app, so. All right, so we want to select our Windows Form app using C#, and click Next. We then have to give it a name. Let's call this our lovely form 1. There we go. You can select a folder for that to be placed in, just for convenience. I'm going to put it in my documents. There we go. Project will be created in documents / our lovely form 1 / our lovely form 1. Next. Now, on our next screen, it's asking you which version of the .NET framework you would like to use. For our purposes, we're not going to be doing anything sufficiently complicated that any updates between 6 and 7 are likely to impact us. So, let's do .NET 7.0.
So it's good.
Yes,
So I have to be selecting this one, I would say, right?
that's the one, yeah.
Okay, and select this C-sharp.
Those aren't buttons, those are tags.
Okay.
Just click next. Give it a name. Click next. Then click .NET 7.0.
But it didn't ask me to select the C-sharp, it's okay, right?
Oh,
It's automatically?
you did when you selected the project type.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It had a little C# icon in the corner. Everybody thus far doing good? Create. Dum 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 dum. There we go. There we go. So you can see it's asking us to design a form. We have a blank form. We can resize our form. You know, maybe make it a bit smaller. All that kind of fun stuff. So let's take a look around the project a little bit. Here, let me see if I can zoom in a little. Possibly not. Let's see here. View. I don't see a zoom. No. Okay. Can you read this? Okay. So, form1.cs is this form. This is a graphical representation of the form, but we also have a representation in code. So this program, once we start adding bits and bobs, is going to auto-populate a certain amount of the code that we're adding by adding things to our form. So the computer is going to be writing code for us, which is nice, always good. The program here, a lot of this we won't have to worry too much about, but I'm just showing you that there's a lot of stuff going on underneath the hood, right? That we don't have to necessarily worry about. So, let's go back to our form, and let's talk about the various types of inputs. So, for the time being, let's concern ourselves with input, output, and processing. IPO. Input, process, output. So, text boxes, right? Text boxes, text box are one of the more common ways to supply input to a program using a form. When we start talking about web technologies next semester, you will see that constructing forms in HTML is also, it's going to follow a very similar process to this. In fact, most of the components will reuse the same names. We'll just have to learn how to construct and configure these in a different language. So text boxes, formal definition of a text box. It has a cursor. You place the cursor in the text box, type on the keyboard, you enter a string, right? And that data can be taken and processed elsewhere in the program. So, I'm sure everybody's used a text box before. These are labels. labels are non-editable text. The user cannot edit label text, but the program itself can. Labels are a way of outputting strings, which are the results of calculations, back to the user. So, we might have an output label somewhere on our screen that will relay some kind of information to the user based on events that happen, based on the processing of inputs and the producing of outputs. Now, the question then becomes, when does the processing occur? Now, in Unity, we had the Unity engine, which processed data for us at, fixed intervals. We had data which was processed when objects are created, using either the object constructor or the start method. We had data being processed once per frame in game. That's our update method. And then we had one that processed data at fixed time intervals. That's fixed update. And we had a few other ones as well, like on application quit or a on destroy method, right? We had various methods that all activate code at different times. Some of them, though, running periodically. In forms, our data is run on events. What I have described to you, all of the Unity methods that we've used so far, I have described an event system. I have described a somewhat more complicated event system that exists inside of these forms. Inside of forms, events are primarily driven on button clicks, right? So, when we add a button, we get an associated event. Well, we will get an event from the button as soon as we, hook the button up to some code. So text boxes provide input, labels provide output, buttons perform actions. We have a number of other different types of inputs which we can use. Some of them are for giving numeric values. Some of them are for selecting between some options. So, for example, text boxes are one thing, but you can also have numeric boxes, which typically have the little up and down arrows. These are usually for entering integers, although number boxes for floats also exist. So that's for numeric input. An alternative to this is the slide bar. Right? Numeric inputs, you can constrain them to have a particular range, but if you want that range visually represented, you can use a slide bar control to give definite, like, between 0 and 10 type inputs. They don't have to be, you can pick whatever numbers you want here. You can start that at like -30 and go up to 100, or it doesn't matter, right? So that's a slide bar input. Volume controls are typically done with slide bar inputs. You then also have checkboxes and radio boxes. So, we have checkboxes. And we have radio boxes. Does anybody know the difference between a checkbox and a radio box?
Sure. But they go with multiple choices, so
Yes. Checkboxes support multiple selections. Radio buttons are exclusively just one option from the list. So, anytime at all, you see, you see a web form or something like that, and you see square boxes versus squares versus circles. Squares are always select any number of these or none, and round is always select exactly one of these. That's well, this has become standardized. It's become standardized to the point where you will see the same thing carried through on things like government forms, like printed out forms, where they expect a yes or a no, it'll be round, and where they expect, other things, they'll be squares. So this has become quite common. Make sense? Good. So, basically, those are all the different types of things that I care to show you at the moment. When we talk about HTML, there's one more. So the alternative to radio boxes is the drop-down menu, right?
There's an option, yes or no options.
Mm-hmm. Right? You click it, you get all of the options. You get like a little scroll bar here, right? The idea with that one is sometimes you have so many options here that it's really not convenient to list all of them and take up space with all of them. So you can compact that down to one openable interface that you can scroll through many, many options. And those can be arbitrarily long, so that's good. So, good. Now I just need to get where's my There's supposed to be like a pane full of these widgets that you can drag and drop. Do you guys have it on yours? Do you have just data sources?
Yeah, we have just the data source.
Hmm. Must be an inversion problem. Toolbars. Yes, toolbox. View toolbox. View toolbox. There it is. All right. Initializing toolbox. So,
So, Professor, you went to file? How did you?
I went to view
View?
toolbox. That's where they hit it. I don't know why they wouldn't open that by default.
Tool bar?
Toolbox.
Oh, okay.
You can also hit Control-Alt-X. Good. So, if you take a look under Common Controls, we've got we've got a list of things which include more things than, that's a larger set of things than I just discussed on the board. But in general, you know, a lot of the ones that we've talked about are represented. So we have check boxes, combo boxes, labels, picture boxes. There's also a calendar, date time picker, text box, very good, radio button. Do you know what the difference between a text box and a rich text box is?
It accepts symbols or
Kind of.
symbols and
They both accept the same amount of string, or the same amount of characters in string. The difference is actually in like the control size. So a regular text box is normally only one line long, and it doesn't support multiple lines very well. Even if you can press enter, you'll probably like only be able to see one row at a time. A rich text box will typically be larger, compose multiple lines, may have a scroll bar, and will also sometimes have this little control in the bottom corner, which allows you to resize the text box. These are typically used for longer inputs. So, good. Make sense? Hopefully. So, let's grab a button. You click and drag off of the toolbox and place it somewhere on your form. There we go. At any point, you can run the application by pressing the green arrow at the top, the green play button. You can see, here we have it. Our form is now a live program inside of the operating system. We can click on the button, but it doesn't do anything because we haven't hooked it up to anything yet. So far, so good?
Yeah.
A little bit simpler than Unity?
flashback to Visual Basic.
Yeah. So,
I have some dynamic tool open and it shows me like, process memory time and CPU and all that.
oh, cool. Diagnostics. They're not relevant, but you can
Close it.
you can close it, but yeah. So if you right-click on your form and click View Code, this should begin to look a bit more familiar,
Yep.
right? So let's examine a little bit what's going on here.
There is a class and there is a constructor.
There's a class and there is a constructor. There is also inheritance going on. What are we inheriting from?
From Form 1.
Yes, from form. Form 1 is the name of the class that we've made. Form is the name of the class we're inheriting from. The form class will contain definitions for all of the components that we are adding to the form. Buttons, text boxes, labels, etc. So, let us give some functionality to this button. So in the form designer, if you double click on the button, it automatically creates a method that will be activated when that button is clicked. Very good. No? You might not be clicking fast enough.
Okay.
It's a double click. There you go. So, let's get some form of hello world going. So, the message box displays a message window, also known as a dialog box, which presents a message to the user. It is a modal window blocking other actions in the application until the user closes it. A message box can contain text, buttons, and symbols that inform and instruct the user. For the time being, let's just give it a hello world. Show. Running this code. There we go. Hello world. So far so good. Did everybody get that far?
What is event audio?
So, well, let's take a look. Let's see what it does if it is not null. String. Maybe he's got to have something to show it itself. E.toString. There we go. So it's passing information about the event which triggered the method. In this case, the location of the origin point of this event.
Professor, I don't see it.
Did you close and restart it?
No.
stop. There we go, try again. There you go. So Unity has this thing which perhaps some of you were making use of, where you can edit a script while a Unity program is running, and it will change the program to reflect that while it's running. Most programs won't do that. For most programs, in order to see any changes you've made executed, you must stop the whole program and restart it. Make sense? Any questions so far? Pretty basic, right? Good. So, on to our next step. Let's see if we can get input through a text box working. So, in our form designer, I don't think we need it to be quite this large, do we? Yeah, that's better. So, before we dive into text boxes, you remember how Unity had a properties editor? Well, in this part of Visual Studio, our form objects also have an editor, or a properties editor. If you right-click on the element and click Properties, you will see the Properties pane come up, and we can modify many things about. Ooh, is my form still running? It is. We can modify many things about our form. You know, perhaps I want a different background color. Perhaps I want, man, this is such a boring list of colors. How about light blue? There we go. Most importantly, the button text can be modified here. So, say hello. Make sense? There are many other properties that you can play with there. You can also modify the size of the button if you want to. If you are, into strange graphic designs and non-standard sizes on buttons, if you really want to. Okay, there we go. So, let us now create a text box and see if we can't hook that text box up to our button. So far, so good? Am I moving at a good pace? Good. So, going back into our toolbox, let's grab the text box component and pop it in. Maybe make it a bit longer. Maybe align it center. You'll notice that as you're dragging it along, you get various lines that pop out that indicate alignment with other elements on the page, the center of the form, all kinds of stuff. The more you make use of them, the nicer your dialogue will look. Good. So double-clicking on our text box creates a new type of event. Text changed. As you might imagine, this will run a particular script every time the user changes the contents of that text box. So, for example, let's just, see how that works. Message box.show. Text has changed. There we go. Running our program. We can say, hello. Aha. So, depending on what system you're using, on-text change has different behaviors. Sometimes it waits for you. Pardon me, thank you. Sometimes it waits for you to press enter or click off of the text box before it modifies things, right? Before it runs that method. In this case, it will do this after every character that is entered. So there you go. Every key press in the text box activates that method, which is a little bit aggressive, but you would also never, ever, ever show a message box every time somebody typed one character into a text box. That's a little silly. The things you could do with this, though, has anybody ever been using a form and you have to enter a telephone number, and when you've entered the correct number of numbers, it puts braces around and inserts the dashes for you?
Yep.
That's where that would be happening,
Oh.
right? Because you would be keeping track of how many numbers the user has entered, and then you would modify the value in that text box according to it. Yeah.
So for example, for social insurance number,
Mhm.
so if you wanna hide the middle three numbers,
Mm-hmm.
then we can still use this one, right? By just hiding those numbers.
Well,
Or spacing them out.
you could do it, yeah. The trick is you would also need to save that data somewhere else, right? But yeah, in theory, that would be fine. So, yes, good. We can do that as a programming example, but let's just get something basic working first. I don't think we need this method, so let's delete it. I just wanted to show you that, because it's kind of interesting. So, it doesn't like that I did that.
I think you deleted everything.
I just, I removed that method, and now it doesn't like me anymore. So, formdesigner.cs, right? You can see that a lot of code has been added to this thing since the last time we looked at it, right? We have buttons. Button 1 is new button. Text box 1 is new text box. Button 1 dot back color, right? That's where I set the back color. Positions have been set, size has been set. And then the click has that method added to it, which we created in the other script. So all of this code is being generated automatically as we are modifying the form designer, right?
And we just added two boxes there, and it's so much code.
Mm-hmm. So, exactly, right? You don't want to do all that by hand, if you can help it. There we go. So, now, let's see if we can't get get these things operating. So, Go view, designer. Oh, interesting. Double click here. Hmm. Try closing and reopening. And you can get rid of that too, by ending that. It should prompt you to, yeah, just click here. It's loading. Boom.
Okay, thanks.
One. Question?
Why is it not showing all the blue shade features?
Let's see. Well. Maybe it needs to be reloaded. Maybe. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Does it show usually though?
Sorry?
Does it show usually, like when you're,
Yeah, it should be generating, but I don't know. It's possible it's not everything. I don't know why it's not showing, but as long as it's working, that's the main thing. Oh, just desktop development is fine. Multi-platform means like smartphones as well. We don't care about that at the moment. Oh shoot, we're out of time. Dang it. All right. Let me just see if I can. What did they call it again? Text box 1. Textbox1 dot text. Alright? Textbox1 dot text is where the text box will be storing its text. So the text box, you kind of need to look in here to see what it's calling things. The text box which we just created is text box 1. You can relabel it if you want to, but it's kind of a pain in the butt, so I would recommend just going with the defaults. So we're now intending to show the contents of the text box when the button is clicked. So let's run that. Here we go. Say hello, comma, world. And there we have it.
Rather than showing this way, then we can, okay.
Make sense?
And Professor, where you went to check the text box 1, which is on a designer page? No, on a.
Oh, here. So the meaning of the partial term is that different things have been defined for this class in different files. You'll notice that form1.cs and form1.design.cs are both referencing class form1, right? So they're both creating the same class between the two of them. It's just different pieces are in different locations. Okay? I gotta run to my next class.
Okay.